Hello everybody and welcome back to Danganronpa. If last time Makoto was fucking dying, we tricked Sakura and Genocide Jack into fighting each other. Well, Mukuro tricked them, and Junko tried to manipulate Mukuro. Mukuro is now betraying Junko. Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack had continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with their tricky movements. But when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert!" Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks. "Oh my! Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly." They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin. Oh. They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirting from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office, though. On their way, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Bashiki Madurai. So the students assumed that Madurai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. "Ow! Flocka! Stop!" It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the blood stains that someone had been resting there recently. "Shh! Looks like they're already gone." "Shh! Looks like they're already gone," Mondo remarked, but as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him. "I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues." "Huh?" asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening. "Clues?" Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. "Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery." Sakura spoke up. "But isn't that dangerous?" Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, "I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Chihiro and I will just be in your way. I think it's best if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from outside the school." You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens." Sakura left the nurse's office. "How did she destroy Monokuma like this?" As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found and let out a small sigh before she spoke. "Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance. I dragged you into this gamble of mine. So if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help." What does that mean? But instead of answering Chihiro's question, Kyoko started talking to one of the empty beds. "Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it in its entirety." Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The ultimate lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate programmer to make a request. Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recording function? And do you also have a microphone? Huh? Yeah. I want you to use that to record everything we're about to hear. Calm down. But there's no one here. As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma's parts to her laptop and turned on the record function. I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now, said Chihiro nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. Stop, Flocka. Stop! So what were you going to do if I told everyone that I found Makoto? When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. The fuck? This connection is less stable. I had to use a different app to connect my phone to my PlayStation, and it is less stable. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed to be some kind of saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. That was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge. She was already surprised that Makoto had been in the nurse's office this whole time. Not only that, the fuck is with the connection? But Kyoko was talking to the bed that Makoto was under, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity and take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding there was clinging to the frame of the bed, like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anybody was there. Though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under the bed for so long, she could at least understand that their strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Mukuro Ikusaba. But you pretend not to notice. Why? Mukuro's voice was cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as she responded. Because I wanted to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed. Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Mukuro seemed to come to a similar conclusion and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mukuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against the wall and let her arms fall to her sides as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kyoko thought about this simple question for a while, as if she were searching within her own heart for the answer. If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kyoko quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted into this school. She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her, but Kyoko didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts. I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the methodology that's been instilled into me. I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko.
But before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it?
Mikuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as if she were asking it of herself as well.
What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy?
The answer to that question was simple. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. That answer marked a turning point for both girls.
Thank you. I have a better understanding of this situation now.
Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented a theory.
If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we're taking into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility.
Possibility?
Yes. When you said to Byakuya, when you thought you were taking Toko hostage, you claimed that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that might actually be true. The fact that Makoto called out Mukuro's name, the scenes that Mukuro confirmed he denied, Genocide Jack's Genocide Jack's outlandish claims. These key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observational skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased, like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years. What do you mean?
What do you mean? Chihiro cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Mikuro.
We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at the school. But it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what had happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope's Peak Academy, and our memories of that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we weren't even Ultimates at all. Just random people who've been implanted with 16 years worth of false memories.
Though Kyoko's claim sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Mukuro once again.
Which means I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth.
Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence. But she didn't let that silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words.
Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Mukuro. I have no intention of blindly believing what you're going to say, or what that self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said.
She paused and lowered her eyes again, and declared with powerful determination.
Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. But I can only do that if you trust me and tell me the truth.
Kyoko's conviction was clear from her voice. Mukuro's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked toward Kyoko. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion.
That's right. I completely forgot. You're like that.
Mukuro repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kyoko and declared,
That must be why Junko took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others.
Very well. I'll tell you everything. And after Mukuro placed Makoto back onto the bed, she began to mechanically tell a story. The story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair, a girl who only felt truly happy when she was filled with despair herself. A plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that. How the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Mukuro provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded even more outrageous than Kyoko had expected. And through her story, Kyoko was able to learn the truth about herself, who she is and why she came to the academy, including the academy's real headmaster, Kyoko's father.
As she listened to Mukuro's story, Kyoko remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps a memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no guarantee Kyoko would even believe her story. After Mukuro finished speaking, Kyoko stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she was able to listen to Mukuro's story without interrupting her or dismissing it as nonsense. Mukuro continued, "You don't have to believe me. After all, I need pictures that could prove my story are with Junko. All I can do is talk." After she said that, Mukuro silently walked toward the entrance to the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. "But even if you don't believe me, you still listen to everything I have to say. So, Kyoko, Chihiro, thank you." So apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Makoto lay, breathing weakly. "Make sure Makoto stays rested. When he wakes up, make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please." "Of course, but what are you going to do now?" asked Kyoko. Mukuro straightened herself up. "Despair. I need to make Junko feel despair." Mukuro continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. "There's nothing else I can do." "No, there is something you can do." Mukuro stopped walking as Kyoko finally spoke firmly. "Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Junko Yoshima or Bashiki Madarai, if you're dealing with him, you won't be able to lay a finger on Makoto. I don't fully trust you, but if you're really concerned for Makoto's life, I'm willing to work with you." "Unlike Bashiki, who's probably abandoned him already, right? I'm sorry, I don't really work well with others." Mukuro looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. "But, I'll do my best." The doors closed, and Mukuro was gone. "I'm sorry for involving you in something so dangerous, Chihiro." As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Mukuro gave her, Kyoko turned to Chihiro, who was still working on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Chihiro slowly looked back at Kyoko. Kyoko? About what Mukuro said just now?" Chihiro's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kyoko tried to calm her down. "We can't determine if anything she told us is true. There's no need to be afraid." But Chihiro shook her head and returned to looking at her laptop. I think she's telling the truth." "What are you basing that on?" Well, it looks like Monokuma is really being controlled from the outside. Part of Monokuma's system had been connected to Chihiro's laptop, and she was analyzing the data within its control system. And it was then that the Ultimate Programmer noticed something unusual about it. "This control program, I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational." Chihiro started trembling so much that she was unable to continue speaking. "We can't confirm that," said Kyoko, proposing another possibility to avoid jumping to conclusions. "It's possible that a similar program was being developed in secret." But Chihiro adamantly shook her head and said, "No, that's not it. It just looks really familiar to me." Kyoko looked over Chihiro's trembling shoulders to peer at the screen, and that's when she noticed. "This program. Chihiro, did you create this?" All the Ultimate Programmer could do was nod weakly. Wowie. First floor, main hall. Mukuro continued moving forward, and was fortunate enough to not encounter Sakura or Mondo. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to a hall as large as the gym, and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped out from the shadows to block her path. It was in this hall that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manner of heavy weaponry. Fuck. Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place here. His laughter rings throughout the room as he wiggled his body from side to side. What were you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival for Makoto's affection? Or did he help you play matchmaker instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Makoto and Kyoko in this kind of situation together? If this were a suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing. But if this was a horror film, they'd just die anyway. Akira was alive all along. Spat goes the blood, plop goes the meat. I'm a huge fan of endings where the characters think they're gonna live, but they're really headed to a final destination. Wait, what the hell is destination? What does that even mean? Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Mukuro remained unperturbed. She continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma, as if she was waiting for him to finish speaking. Well, anyway, I'm just so sad right now. A regulation-breaking delinquent is disrupting the harmony of this peaceful academy. I can't even keep one of my students from running wild. Time to say goodbye to your incompetent headmaster. I'm gonna use Monokuma Evolution to become a big Magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student. As soon as he said that, Monokuma extended his claws and waddled toward Mukuro. So, if I'm gonna mold you, then I'm gonna kill you first. Right as he finished speaking, Mukuro suddenly charged at Monokuma. Monokuma suddenly charged at Mukuro like a spiked volleyball, but Mukuro was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping her distance from Monokuma just in case his claw could extend even longer. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Mukuro twisted her body to its limits Mukuro twisted her body to its limits and just narrowly avoided the figure's attack. When she landed on the floor, she immediately saw. So, what does the immortal killer want anyway? Are you going to tell the others the truth and escape with them? Even though you know what the outside world is like right now. Two Monokumas were speaking to Mukuro in unison. Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on everyone's face when they discover the truth. It fills me with such heart-throbbing excitement. The two Monokumas continued to speak in stereo sound. You said you destroy my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you, no matter which route you take. And you only have yourself to blame for that. Don't tell me you thought they'd be grateful to you, even if you guys escaped here. Do you think they'll still forgive you when they get a whiff of that nasty air outside? Some of them might prefer to stay in the school, and some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. But then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they think of you. Monokuma made a little mistake. Despite facing down two Monokumas, Mukuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling two Monokumas simultaneously was a piece of cake for Junko. Mukuro drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and readied herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office, sharpened to a pointed weapon. With her weapon in hand, Mukuro responded in a cold and critical tone. That's fine. I'm already used to that. None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Makoto would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clear to her now, and she calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. Junko, open the gates. The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokumas momentarily speechless, but soon they replied, Huh? Why? So we can all leave together. Another straightforward answer. Both Monokumas faced each other and began gesturing as if they were whispering to one another. Mukuro knew their movements were intended to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Junko directly. I think they'll understand if I show them the outside world. And then they'll stop doubting Makoto. You always find new ways to disappoint me, Mukuro. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system? It's true that the air outside is polluted, but I don't think it'll kill us all immediately. Besides, it's better than being trapped in the school and forced to kill each other. How can you be so sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space dust, he interviewed the students and they all agreed that they wanted to stay in the school. That was before their memories had even been erased. Do you really want to betray their wishes? Mukuro blinked and slowly stepped forward. I don't really care about their feelings. Huh? You're all I need to, though. So don't worry. I'm always watching out for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair. I'm going to make Makoto and the others happy. If you want to revel in your own despair that badly, then I'll trust that the hope Makoto gave me, and take my chances with them instead of you. Mukuro's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn and talk to each other again. Oh my! This doesn't look good at all, Monokuma, eh? This child doesn't realize her own hypocrisy. She's so disappointing, but she's starting to reach critical mass, right, Monokuma B? The two Monokumas looked at Mukuro, who seemed ready to destroy them, and said, What do you think, Monokuma C? Mukuro was taken aback by their question. But her instincts suddenly kicked in and she immediately dodged away. At that moment, the third Monokuma, claws extended, passed by where her head had been previously. This new Monokuma landed with several spins and faced Mukuro, who had clung to the remains of a surveillance camera still attached to the ceiling. I agree with you both, A and B. The three Monokumas lined themselves up. So the students locked inside each hand near the sight would have been akin to a nightmare. Right on! The three units began speaking in perfect harmony as their 6 eyes looked up at Mukuro. Suddenly, they each jumped away in their 3 separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack all converged on a single point, Mukuro, who still clung to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. The situation wasn't even a nightmare to Mukuro. Compared to the time she fended off the assassins who had invaded the camp when they went back into the still number of enemy, this was nothing. The slot crossed Mukuro's knife dangled from the ceiling and flashed her wings around like a tornado. Undecepted by this movement, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a loud crash. Mukuro landed on the ground and chased after one of them, brandishing her metal bar. Suddenly, she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He had detonated the bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Mukuro down with him. Thanks to her honed battlefield instincts, Mukuro managed to avoid the explosion. She looked toward the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attracted the attention of Sakura and the others. But she didn't hear any footsteps approaching. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke. Oh, you don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I disarmed the poison gas and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kyoko and the others are all in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Makoto is with them too. I thought Sakura was at Tsu's officing, but I'm sure Byakuya will fortune Makoto wants you to accept. I can just imagine him rubbing salt or pouring soy sauce into his open wounds. Man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now. As she listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices, Mukuro tilted her head slightly and asked, I'm pretty sure they're going to find out that you lied about that special police unit. Are you really okay with that? No worries. Once I felt with you, I didn't care at all if they find out I was lying. You still don't get it. You're such a disappointment. It suddenly dawned on Mukuro. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care if the stage turned out he lied, but rather that the voices of Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokumas appeared. The one that exploded couldn't have been revived, so the new one must have come to take its place. There's no way Miko only heard 3 Monokumas talking just now. As if the proof of hearing had been accurate, the Monokuma suddenly moved. The 3 Monokumas bent over and began throwing their upper bodies. From behind them, new Monokumas emerged like afterwards brought to life. The second row of Monokumas mimicked the earlier ones, with only one frame of ground, leaving even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, Miko realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each. Did you know this is called a circle dance? Monokuma's 30 voices spoke in perfect harmony as they divulged information that had nothing to do with the current situation. Mukuro already knew that the multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Junko knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Mukuro had no way of knowing if these 30 Monokumas were part of a larger contingent. The flock of 2-toned teddy bears continued to twirl around. Mukuro felt like she was being bombarded with hypnotic images. At first, with this abnormal sight, the looking soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked earlier and Giannon thought it was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of death, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing throughout her body, speeding up the reacting time of her cells. As her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again. Don't worry, I'll make sure Makoto doesn't die. As long as everyone lives, I can reset their memories as many times as I want. What was that? That's right. All of your effort, hope, dreams, and plans are going right in the garbage heap. The Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10, as if the mastermind controlling the Monokumas wanted to shut off their ability to manipulate them. However, the ultimate soldier knew what the true purpose behind all this was. She strained her ears to their link and noticed a certain sound coming among the Monokumas' voices. Miko's face remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The ranks moved to the side as rolling sun shook the entrance hall. The ceiling mounted turrets in front of the gate started raining bullets down on Mukuro. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy while she tried to blow her away. As if further trapping her, the Monokumas charged at Mukuro through the storm of bullets. Mukuro guessed that the mastermind programmed their movements in advance so they wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran to the gates, evading waves of bullets and claws every step of the way. Programming 10 Monokumas and 2 turrets, while also predicting Mukuro's escape route. This would be considered impossible for anyone, but Mukuro knew it was possible for Junko. As ultimate despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities. It surpassed the capabilities of any normal human. Display power was only for filling Mukuro with despair. Despair. The scene playing out in front of Mukuro was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokumas laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It was despair to the point of absurdity, and it was all for Mukuro. But in the presence of such despair, Mukuro felt a strange serenity. For me? Junko's doing all this for me. Junko, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Mukuro really was a disappointment. She clenched her fists. Junko, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, and Mukuro fell completely silent. As a member of the Ultimate Despair, Mukuro's heart was filled with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turret seemed to stop for a moment. That was only an illusion for to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and avoid being picked up by the sensors spread through the school, with Mukuro at the center. I'll make sure I do this right. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned off her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder. As this coolness spread into her heart, it began to beat in mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Mukuro's body and mind melded together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature now dominated the battlefield. Crosswords. The spare bullets and Monokuma filled the area. Mukuro predicted their movements and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokumas jumped at her, and she avoided his attack, kicked his body, and launched herself in midair. Bullets pierced through the space Mukuro was previously occupying, striking the falling Monokuma right through its internal bomb. The impact of the bullet caused it to explode, sending fiery Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Mukuro balanced herself in midair as she kicked away 2-3 Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves into the path of oncoming bullets, exploding one after the other. Some of them exploded near the main entrance, but the blasts didn't even leave a scratch. With full control over the entrance hall, Mukuro evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokuma weren't enough to destroy the door. But she refused to stop. Mukuro needed to get information on what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Junko. Mukuro wanted to fill Junko with despair by instilling hope into the future of Makoto and the other students. That was Mukuro's ultimate goal: get information. Contrast to her determination, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Mukuro was not currently speaking with Junko. This situation, this battle of death and destruction, was a conversation of sorts to beat for Mukuro. All she knew how to do was fight. She thought she wasn't interested in anything else. She thought she didn't need anything else. All Mukuro needed to be was a sword to fulfill her sister's desire for despair. That purpose alone was the crux of her existence. She lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Mukuro. The battle to the death revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, including others who also speak the language of violence. This was true even against her sister. When Junko would berate her sister, Mukuro couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologize profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Junko was using a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair tore the world apart to speak into her sister with the language of power. Mukuro's heart filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on her conversation with Junko, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Mukuro continued their heated conversation. Endless rounds of despair fired from the school's turrets, but Mukuro's words intercepted every last violent shot that threatened to shatter her body and mind in half. She quickly realized that the Monokumas hadn't decreased in number at all, no matter how many she kept destroying. Not only that, she noticed that more Monokumas had been joining the fray until there were nearly 50 of them for Mukuro to fight. But Mukuro's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko. She learned hope from her acts of violence. For Mukuro, who had no interest in this world, the small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of her perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely days. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair, which accompanies the music of hope. I think that's where I'm gonna end. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So, that will be all for today. Next time we will finish Danganronpa if. Bye bye!